I was afraid this would happen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to Omni at the Movies, where today we'll be looking at Pacific Rim Resurgence. I mean Independence Day Uprising. I mean Transformers The Last Night. I mean Highlander 2 The Quickening. Darn it, Omni, the poster is right there. Just read the title. Pacific Rim Uprising. Okay. Now, that little routine may very well tell you everything you need to know. Yeah, sorry folks, this is not a good one. Nowhere near as frustrating as the Cloverfield paradox, but still very disappointing. I guess I'm not taking it that hard because I was bracing myself for a disappointing sequel, but that doesn't change the fact that I just watched a disappointing sequel. Pacific Rim Uprising just doesn't work. On the one hand, it's just a bland retread of the original movie. All of the kaiju and Jaeger designs feel like lazy reimaginings of everything from the first film. Only this time, everything is brighter and sleeker because the CGI isn't as good. But on the other hand, this movie does take things in a different direction, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a good direction. This movie basically is Independence Day Resurgence. It takes a story that clearly had an ending and tries continuing it in a way that really doesn't work. Heck, even the very last shot of the movie is basically the main character saying that next time they're taking the fight to the aliens. Just like how Independence Day Resurgence ended. Admittedly, some of the directions they wound up going were things that I honestly thought could have worked. Stuff involving the rogue Jaeger and Jaeger kaiju hybrids. Those were interesting ideas. Those would have been a good way to continue the story. However, they're taken out of the movie about halfway through, so we can fall back to the original Jaeger vs. Kaiju thing without really much difference to it. Various plot elements are introduced to try to make the movie feel more complex, but ultimately it just winds up feeling unnecessary. In particular, there's stuff that directly conflicts with the first movie. Even though I did just give away the last scene of the movie, I won't go into any detailed spoilers, but still, these were contradictions, and I don't like when contradictions happen like this. More to the point though, the tone was different. I was worried this movie was gonna wind up being a Transformers movie, and I was right. Well, up to a point I was right. The original movie had pathos. It was a melodrama, sure, but the actors sold it. The pacing was very deliberate, allowing the characters to interact and figure each other out. The action was all character-driven, thanks to how both the Jaegers and the kaiju had their own bits of personality. And the little hints of comedy that were snuck in throughout were very well timed and did not detract from the experience. Take all of that and throw it out the window for Pacific Rim Uprising. The pacing is really bad. Characters aren't really given enough time to interact in any sort of meaningful way. This is especially bad for Kaylee Spaney's character. She spends most of the movie as an outsider who is such a loner she can't even drift with the training program, and then suddenly when the script contrives a situation where she has to drift with John Boyega's character, suddenly she can do it. You know, even though she couldn't drift with him before. There's one female character who's supposed to be the romantic interest for both John Boyega and his co-pilot guy, but she's hardly in the movie, so that doesn't really go anywhere. Tianjing's character is an evil industrialist until she's not anymore. And there's a particular thing involving one of the few returning characters that I don't necessarily want to spoil here, but I didn't really think it worked at all. Those who have seen the movie certainly know what I'm talking about. As for the action, sure, you've got giant robots fighting giant monsters just like last time, and I guess visually that's still cool, but there just isn't any weight to it. And I'm not talking about the Jaegers and kaiju floating around like they're weightless, although a couple of times that does happen. I'm talking about the fact that there's no reason to care. We don't really know these characters, we haven't spent enough time with them, and what little we've seen of them doesn't really present them as likable. Certainly not as likable as the original characters were. So when it's time for the final battle to save the world, there just isn't any emotional investment. And as for the comedy... I don't know who had the bright idea to include the comedic bits, but they always fail. They range from the cliché, like Newt being unable to speak Chinese properly, to could have been funny if this got more development, like a moment between John Boyega, his co-pilot, and the girl they're both supposedly crushing on. And then you have stuff that just should never have gotten into this movie at all. During a particular moment towards the end that's supposed to be an epic triumphant scene, I kid you not, the Trollolololol song starts playing. I wish I were making that up, but I'm not. It happens in the movie, for real. Why? Yeah, sorry to burst your bubble, everyone, but Pacific Rim Uprising just does not work. And before anyone tries pulling that tired old, "you just don't like it 'cause it's different" argument on me again, you're wrong. I don't hate different things. A sequel being different from what came before it is how you keep a story going. I am not against the idea of a sequel being different from what came before it. However, you must take care that the stuff you do differently is good in its own right. Suppose I make a batch of cookies, but instead of 2 cups of sugar, I put in 2 cups of sand I got from the beach. You can't deny that this is a different choice, but does that result in edible cookies? Heck no. That's the ultimate descriptor I can give Pacific Rim Uprising. Someone put sand in the cookies. If you haven't seen this movie already, don't bother. Just rewatch the original instead. If you did see it, I'm sorry. As always, you're free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.